going on in Washington, and as soon as I cover those, then we're going to launch into your questions or comments. The first one is ObamaCare. And I say that respectfully. The president calls it ObamaCare also, or the Affordable Care Act, Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, but that's more of a mouthful. This is now heading for a train wreck, I believe. I still do not like the bill any more than when I voted against it 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. And the president and his people said, we're going to delay the employer mandate for a year. They realize it's unworkable. They can't make it work in time. The employer mandate, though, excuse me, the individual mandate for you and me is still in effect. And that'll start January 1st, and we have to start signing up October 1st. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But right before we left for August, the House passed a bill, I supported this, saying that we would defund the Internal Revenue Service from their ability to enforce Obamacare. So, and also, the week or two before that, we also passed legislation to make the individual mandate delayed for a year, because one other strategy is to keep delaying it until there's a new person in the White House in 2017 who would hopefully be willing to defund and repeal Obamacare. Now, there's a movement afoot, and I support this, to defund Obamacare. One problem, though, is the bill was written in such a way where 80% of the funding is outside of the control of Congress. It's on automatic pilot, and it's done through the Treasury Department and things like that. It's so, I think, violating our separation of powers that the founders gave us as a country. But that's a whole different story. But 80% of Obamacare can't be defunded, even if we had the Senate agreeing with this and the White House agreeing with this. So that's a steep hill to climb. I like the approach. I think it's more attainable to not let the IRS have money to hire new people to enforce the whole thing. And I won't even get into IRS scandals unless some of you want to. Okay, immigration. And I know there are some people here who are very concerned and want to give me their input on that, and I welcome that. It's an issue I'm still working out a lot of the fine points. I'm still listening and learning. I'm hoping to go down to Tucson in the next month or two, to the border myself, where I can see what's happening. I don't like, I'll tell you right now, some things I do have solid in my thinking. I don't like the Senate bill. I believe that it does lead to amnesty, and therefore is unacceptable to me. I think we should have strong border security, and the Senate bill does some good things that way. And we should have a good e-verify system, so people who are hired who are U.S. citizens and or are in the country legally. So I think we should do a better job of letting guest workers work in this country. This was done in the 50s and 60s. Due to union opposition, it was stopped after that. But it's a way for people legally who just want to make a paycheck and maybe send money back wherever their home country is and their family to help them out. And they may or may not want to become citizens, but they want to work and they want to contribute to our economy. And I think we should do a better job of allowing that. And highly skilled people, or people with money to create jobs and businesses, we should do a better job of letting them, based on their merit, become citizens. We do a lot of family connections with immigration, but less than 10% is what I've heard is based on merit of skills or education or ability to produce jobs. And I think that that's way out of balance. And the other big issue I want to mention is defense spending. I had a huge victory with civilian furloughs. I introduced an amendment during our debate on the House floor where we were passing the Department of Defense budget, appropriations bill to say no more civilian furloughs come October 1st. No more civilian furloughs. Some of you might be or might know people who are affected by that. We will have 6. They backed down from originally 22. Now they're down to 6. I think that I normally defer to the Pentagon and want them to have all the tools in their tool chest to get the job done, including how they set their budget. I want to work with them. I support them. But I don't want to use a tool that had become politicized. And I think civilian furloughs had become politicized. Look at the FAA traffic controllers, or shutting down White House tours, or things like that. It had just gotten politicized, so that's something that should have been taken off the table. And in the House bill, it now is off the table thanks to my amendment. My job, though, now is to talk to our senators and keep it going so it'll become the law of the land. But it's good so far. Now, sequestration is still an issue. The House and the Senate have totally different approaches to the budget. And that's unfortunate because it has not yet been resolved which direction we're going to go, or something in the middle. But in the House version, we stay under the budget caps that the Budget Control Act, which I voted against, but it's the law of the land now. The Budget Control Act set up sequestration and budget caps. The House stays under those limits and respects that, but shifts more money to defense and less out of things like food stamps. 1/6 of the country is on food stamps right now, and I think that's over. We've gone too far in that direction. And I can get into that if someone wants to. But so that's just one example. But we spend more on defense and stay under the caps. The Senate is spending $91 billion more. They're not respecting the caps, although they adopted the law as well as the House did. And they're keeping defense down. So in those ways, our House and Senate budgets are very much at odds with each other. How that's going to be worked out, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. So those are the hot topics in Washington right now. At this point, I want to go ahead and open things up to questions or comments. You can just make a comment and I'll listen, but try to keep it under a minute, because that way we can get to as many people as possible. Okay, who would be first? And there's 2 folks in the aisles here. Just raise your hand, and in the front row, Dale will bring you a microphone. Sir, right here in the middle, right there.
Here's one live.
The things that you had mentioned earlier are all very important, and they address directly many of the issues that you deal with in Congress.
Yeah.
I believe the biggest issue, which encompasses all of these issues, is the issue that our branches of government, which were designed to help control one another, are out of kilter. The checks and balances are not there. And the man who heads the administration has done an end around on every obstacle that he doesn't want to work with anybody on. That is the #1 issue, without a doubt. And it is the Congress's obligation to rein in those powers by having control of the purse strings. And I would like to know what Congress is going to do. And honestly, our democratic process hangs in the balance of all of this.
All right, thanks for your question and comment. No, thank you. Great question, and it does actually lead to immigration, because we saw an executive order where the president sort of disregarded what the laws Congress had written and had his own view of what should happen with undocumented folks. So I can tell you what the House would do more than I can tell you what the Senate would do. The Senate may do the opposite of what we would do. They will enable and roll over for the president no matter what he does. I mean, I'll just put it out there for you. They will, he says to jump, they'll say, how high? In the House, we will oppose. Funding is one thing we can do. We control a purse string. The Senate controls a purse string. And sometimes they're ladling money in and we're trying to take it out. So it may be that there is a confrontation, and people talk about, you know, shutting down the government or something like that. Okay. 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 Although, I want to know what the end game is there. The reason is because if we stop paying people in the military, or that woman on the grandmother doesn't get her Social Security check, we have to have an end game to figure out, you know, what we do there. Or, but there's times we've gone to court. We're still in the courts over Fast and Furious. Our Attorney General didn't, well, he didn't, our Attorney General didn't turn over, in response to House subpoenas, documents that were important to have. So they have stonewalled. We're in the courts. Sometimes, you know, we're doing those kinds of things. I'm having hearings all the time exposing the president's, well, his people's, his appointees' bad decisions on things like the environment or other things, or shutting down energy. And sometimes the press will bring that to the American people's attention. Sometimes they ignore it. The press isn't always very helpful. So we have challenges in that regard, but I'm hearing you. Thank you. Now, and let's also try to concentrate on immigration at first, because that is something I have to make sure we get some feedback on, so I can take that back with me to Washington. Okay, sir, right here.
Yeah, in the Senate bill, S-744, they allow for a tripling of the, I guess it's a cap on the number of people that can come into the United States on a working visa, and that's generally aimed at what they call STEM workers.
Yes.
And that tripling is based on the requests of the large IT companies, Bill Gates, Zuckerman. And actually, in actuality, there is no shortage of American IT workers. And in actuality, what it is a continued historical effort to suppress the wages of IT workers.
Okay.
And I see that college kids, you know, even the ones that are under the DREAM Act, they come and they graduate from school thinking they're going to get an IT job. It's not going to happen.
Okay.
The job's been filled by a guest worker.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comment. I appreciate that. Let's go to this side. Ma'am, right there. And I'm going to try to get as many as possible, so let's bear with each other.
Hi, I'm going to read my question. I'd like to advocate for citizen children with immigrant parents. I'm a teacher, and 95% of my students are citizens, but they have immigrant parents. I see that my students, in order to learn, be healthy, reach their full potential, they need, in addition to good schools and good teachers, they need a strong family support system that is healthy. And I would argue that undocumented parents deal with a lot of stuff, including poverty, and the fact that they can't advocate for themselves and their families in the ways that I can, that you can. Because I'm sure that you want these citizen students to grow up and thrive. How does this reality affect the way that you approach immigration reform?
Okay. Well, okay, obviously that's outside of the DREAM Act, in my understanding. The DREAM Act is for children who are brought here and are undocumented. We're not brought here illegally. But this is citizen children. Okay. We have the procedures and the precedents in place where these people are said to be citizens if they're born here, no matter what. And so, yeah, I can see how that sets up a tension, a conflict, if their parents are undocumented or illegal. So that's one of the things that I, frankly, am still grappling with. That's a tough issue. I want to respect the law. I want to have compassion when people made decisions that maybe it wasn't their decision. Or we need to be compassionate. But we need to respect the law. So I want to, and that's why it's such a tough issue. I want to also say that with me here today, listening to your thoughts and comments, are 3 elected officials. We have State Senator Kent Lambert, we have County Commissioner Peggy Littleton, and County Commissioner Sally Clark. So thanks for being here. Is there any other elected official I've missed? If so, let me know and I'll do my best to introduce you as well. Okay. Okay. Well, you mean my better half, truly my better half. Okay, let's take a question over here in this third of the, sir, right here. Dale, could you?
You have a bill that you passed out of committee regarding the the Keystone XL pipeline.
Yes.
You've said that you're in favor of it.
Yes.
Are you aware that it's the dirtiest, filthiest oil that's in the world? And then after it's refined, that it's called pet coke. Do you know what that is?
Yes.
And you still want to do this? Wouldn't it be a nice idea if they refined it in Canada in situ and buried this pet coke? I know it has some value. The younger Koch brother sold $11 billion of it last year. It's illegal to burn in the United States or Canada, but China and India, they're selling it too. I mean,
okay.
You're still in favor of it.
Well, can I explain? Let me explain. What he's referring to is out of my subcommittee, we passed a bill saying that Lee Terry of Nebraska brought, saying let's open up the Keystone Pipeline and make it such that it doesn't be subject to a presidential veto. And in the last Congress, I had a bill which had a provision to say, let's open up the Keystone Pipeline as well. And that was my bill, which passed the House but died in the Senate. Okay, we have a lot of environmental regulations in place. I believe we can handle the petroleum products you're referring to in a clean and responsible and safe manner. So we can bring that into our country, process it responsibly, and have the jobs that are associated with having more energy available and have less dependence on foreign countries that really don't like us. So, you know, it's a balancing act. I think that we can have the extra energy and be responsible to the environment and have jobs and have less dependence on foreigners. So I think we can do it all. That's my response. Okay, let's go back to the middle here, sir, right there.
Back on the immigration. Just a comment, you said you wanted some input, some ideas. I've lived in some areas where we've seen the situations firsthand. I lived in Texas, have friends in Arizona. I've seen the upper, the lower, the middle aspect of all the families. And I think what would probably help you and get the information across is, I hate the word study, but sometimes a study for what are the percentages of those, such as this lovely teacher here, and I thank her for what she does. She sees some of the better sides. But when you get to some other areas, you see those where the families are not giving them good role models, where they're just taking and taking off the doles. They're getting doles whether they're not allowed to or not. I mean, they're getting them for free. And the people that deserve them aren't getting them. So we need some studies to say, okay, what's the percentage of those who are working hard in the schools, working towards their future? That's fine. What can we do for them? But also at the same time, what can we do to get the rest of them under control and stop defrauding this country? Okay.
And also, people need to be aware, I need to be aware, that it's not just our neighbor to the south, Mexico, But there are a lot of other countries in this world who have people here that are not documented, that overstayed their visas. They're illegal. I was meeting with some folks from the NAACP yesterday, and they were telling me about they know Germans, Finns, Swedish, Russian, and they would listed off all these countries where they know personally people that are here illegally. So it's not only Mexico, but it's a lot of countries. It's a complicated issue. That brings one other point I want to say on what my view is. I don't believe Congress does comprehensive very well. And I can give you examples where I think we have failed with 2,000-page bills that have all kinds of unintended consequences. Let's tackle this incrementally. Let's take the low-hanging fruit. Let's take the things we can all agree on. Okay, I think we agree in the House and Senate, for instance, that we need more border security. Okay, let's make that a bill. I think we can agree the E-Verify system needs to be improved and needs to actually work. Let's do that. So let's tackle things incrementally. That's my belief. Now, some say, no, we're not going to, if you don't do it all, we're going to withhold our votes. So that's another difference between, within the Republican Party and between the House and Senate. That's one of the controversial things. Okay, we want to take some more questions here. Ma'am, right here. Okay, great. Could you all hear her? What can we do to make sure not just defense jobs, but all jobs are enhanced? Okay, okay. Wait. Okay, wait. Okay, I'm gonna ask that you don't interject comments so I can respond or listen as much as possible, and so everyone gets their say. There's so much we can do. We have a poor energy policy in this country. We have a restrictive energy policy. I have a bill to allow permitting to be a lot easier on federal lands. It's passed out of committee. So if we had more energy development, including the Keystone Pipeline, and I will disagree with this gentleman about that, but we need more energy in this country if it's done responsibly. We need more energy and more jobs that come with that. The natural gas boom that fracking has allowed for, like in Pennsylvania, let's say, has companies that we're going to manufacture in India or somewhere else. They're going to open up their manufacturing plant in Pennsylvania because the feedstock, natural gas, which is used, some of you might be wearing polyester as we speak. Clothing, fuels, all kinds of medicines, all kinds of things are made from petroleum. So if you have natural gas more available, because fracking hasn't been outlawed, although New York State has outlawed it in effect, you have more ability to make those things here with lower cost to the consumer, you and me, more jobs in the making those. So energy is a big thing where I think our administration is missing it entirely. Tax treatment. We have the highest corporate tax rates in the industrialized world, the highest rates in the world. We could do and should do a better job of making rates competitive, if for no other reason, just to be competitive with countries like Canada. I think their rates is like half of our rate. So if you're deciding where to put your factory or create jobs and you're on the U.S.-Canadian border, where are you going to put? You're going to be tempted to put that job in Canada if you need to save that tax money. So we need a better tax system. I was really disappointed that Harry Reid said we're not going to do tax reform this Congress. That is a discouraging message for business. It's just the kind of signals that are crippling our economy and keeping the jobs down and unemployment up. It's the kind of bad message we're getting from some in Congress or the administration where they don't really want to create jobs. They have other agendas in mind, like social fairness or whatever. So, okay, wait. Okay, let's go on to some more questions. this gentleman right here. Then we'll come back here.
Wait until I get to the mic to you. We have a live stream going on, so people on the web can also watch this. That's why.
This is on immigration. I believe we need to get back to Constitution and Declaration of Independence, and I believe
Amen.
the left.
Amen.
It's going to benefit the left if the immigration bill and they give them amnesty, because it'll bring a bunch of the registered, unregistered Democrats, and it'll further their agenda, which is to destroy our Constitution, free market capitalism, and everything that we stand for.
Okay, I don't want to get into the political side, but I do have to agree with you 100%, sir, on the constitutional side. We can't run this government by executive order. We have to do it by laws. And where Congress, the House and Senate are in disagreement, sometimes that's not always a bad thing. There are some people say, well, you should be passing more laws. We have too many laws already. And sometimes we need fewer laws and certainly fewer regulations. But we should wait until we actually can do it right. So that's what I'm taking away from what you're saying. Okay, thank you. Ma'am, right here.
The first question the gentleman put out was my question. So I just want to say, first of all, Congressman, thank you. Thank you for fighting for us.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for your staff, because my husband calls them constantly. This is Bart. And
that's who that is. Yeah.
And I thank you for it. I really do, because I really honestly don't believe anybody's listening to us anymore. I want my country back.
Okay.
I don't care what you have to do. Stand on your desk and in Congress and fight, fight, fight. And I put that on a question card upstairs, but I want you to continue to fight. I want this country back, and I don't want any president, I don't care what president it is, to come in and do whatever he wants. You're getting paid a salary to do a job.
Okay.
You've got to do the job and keep fighting. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Gil, here's a gentleman here who has a question or comment.
Hello there. My name is Jesus Altamirano. I represent National Council of La Raza Action Fund, and I definitely want to thank you for opening up your time to us. And just a comment, a lot of individuals are wondering what studies there are about what frauds are being committed by undocumented individuals. So in March 4th, 2013, so this year, Cato Institute developed an economic development bulletin titled Poor Immigrants Use Public Benefits at a Lower Rate Than Poor Native-Born Citizens. So if anybody wants to hear what actually is happening, look at Cato. Cato is a very well-respected institute, so definitely take a look at it. It certainly is not a liberal institute, but my question to you is, as National Council of La Raza, we do want to restore law, we do want to preserve the law, and we do want to strengthen the fabric of our society. And talking about sequestration, how much of a deficit we really are in, if immigration reform passes, here in Colorado alone, we would be estimated to gain $42 billion in the state economy, and that was just in 2011. So you could imagine what would happen when individuals become citizens and legally. We're not asking for this to be a one-size-fits-all and get people to the front of the line. Much like you are saying, we want to be able to come to the table with rational decisions as to what we should be making the law. Not, as you say, perhaps an executive order, but actual laws that will be beneficial for every single individual in this society, not just one.
Okay. Thank you for your comment. I'm listening to what you're saying. You mentioned Cato. I do respect Cato. However, I do have to point out the Heritage Foundation came up with a very much different result, and I respect them too. So we have dueling studies, and it turns out in this particular case. Okay, sir, right here.
Yeah, I'm looking at some more practical things on this. When my ancestors got off the boat from Ireland, they either lived or died by their own effort. No one was going to help them with anything.
Yeah.
If you didn't succeed, you starved to death, or you died from pneumonia in the first winter. You cannot have open borders and an entitlement society.
Yeah, hold on.
You cannot have open borders and an entitlement society. It simply is not possible. It will destroy us. The people who are coming here will not be brought into our prosperity. They will drag our prosperity down to their poverty. We need to close the borders and have sensible immigration. Have sensible immigration. That right now we have Latins who are a permanent underclass because we have people who want to pay them less money so that we can go buy lettuce for $1 a head. I said, let's buy lettuce for $2 a head and pay people better money and hire fewer.
Okay.
Let's get rid of the underclass because I think it damages us as a people. Let's close the borders so that our prosperity continues to grow. There is no social ill that is not solved by successful commerce.
Okay. Thank you. And Robin, in a second, we'll take this gentleman in the middle of the back row. But while you're getting there, our social entitlement programs are so out of control, in my opinion. $2 trillion of our $3.5 trillion budget are, according to some people, we can't touch them. They're on automatic pilot. That's 60+% of the budget. And we have to look at everything in the budget if we're going to get fiscal health back to our country and live within our means and restore prudent spending policies. I want America to continue to be as prosperous as we've been in the past. I want our country to be the leading country of the world. And we can if we don't blow it. We have threats on the outside that we have to be concerned about, but we also have threats on the inside if we let ourselves become insolvent and squander the prosperity that we've been given as a blessing in this country. So I hear what you're saying. Thank you. Okay, Robin, are you there in the back?
Yeah, and thank you very much. I'm a person of faith who's lived in Colorado Springs their whole life. I'm actually native, so to speak. I know we have a lot of people who've come from other places. So are my parents and my wife's parents also live here, so I'm very much a part of native, so to speak. And I'm also a person of faith. And I'm a person who believes that that should enter into the decisions that we make in a policy level. I think that forms who we are. I think that forms the way we think about each other, the way that we think about this town hall, the way that we think about each person that we're facing here today, and that opportunity that I have with you, that I think the Holy Spirit has given us and that God has given us to talk. So I want to thank you for that, and I think that God brings us to do that. I also think that as a person of faith, I'm bound to think about about people who live here on the planet with me as brothers and sisters. I also think I'm bound to think about people who live in my own town as brothers and sisters. I also think I'm bound to think about who we are talking about when we're talking about a policy that affects real people, not just an idea of what I have. Like the gentleman said, we need some studies. We have a lot of studies, but who are we actually talking about? Who are the people that do you know an immigrant person? Do you know an immigrant family? I happen to work with immigrants in the Colorado Springs area, and I know other people do. That's not to say that everybody's is one way and another way. I think the gentleman is right, and that you are right. What I want to appreciate about your town hall here is that you are listening, and you're listening to a diversity of views. What I want to appreciate today about what you've said is that you recognize that there are many different people coming to this country. There are many different kinds of, we can't just place everybody in one group. Certainly we can't place them in the group of criminals, and I challenge you to find not one study, but as many studies as possible if you want the facts. Immigration Policy Center or I don't know, Cato, but I think that's probably a good source. Heritage probably, you have Hispanic Pew Center and for Hispanic research. as many as you possibly can from as many sources and get the facts for how many, for example, why is it that the incarceration rate of a foreign-born is 3 times lower than American-born? So I want to say thank you very much for this opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comment. Thank
and
you.
I think we have other people of faith here too, don't we?
Okay, and that's a wonderful thing. I hope everyone's a person of faith. Although if you're a person of no faith, that's okay in America also. We're a pluralistic society. Lee, do you have someone back there?
Thank you. I want to get back to basics, if I may. I've been a student of the Constitution for many years.
Hold it closer. Hold it closer.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've been studying the Constitution for many years, and when our founding fathers first put our Constitution together, which I consider one of the greatest documents in the world, one thing that they had spelled out without exception, all 3 branches of government were equal. There was none that was higher than the other. And secondly, the executive branch does not have the authority to make laws, nor does the Supreme Court issue from the bench. That's why we left Britain. That's why our forefathers left England, because there was tyranny going on. King George has been, a.k.a. Barack Obama, who has no clue. Executive orders are only, affect the people in the administration. They do not affect the public. The Congress had no right to pass the immigration law, not the immigration law, the Affordable Care Act, number 1, number 2. He had no right to sign that law. That was totally unconstitutional. There is nothing in the Constitution that mandates us to do or to buy anything. That is an egregious offense against the citizens of this country.
Well, and sir, I'll have to... I have to agree with you. I was bitterly disappointed when that Supreme Court decision came down, saying it was a tax. Everyone said who supported it, it wasn't a tax. And where they came up with that to justify, I don't understand. I was bitterly disappointed, and I think the Supreme Court blew it on that decision. Okay, back up in the corner here, do we have anybody? Okay, there's a lady in this middle of the row.
Okay, sure. I don't really need this, but okay. I would like to see the power of this country go back to the states where it belongs.
Okay. I noticed that State Senator Kent Lambert was nodding his head when you said that. And actually, I was in the State House in the same Senate district he was, and I agree. The states created the federal government, not the other way around. And so we need to respect the 10th Amendment. We need to let states be laboratories of democracy. If they have a different way of doing something, let them do it. And if it works, we'll all learn from that example. So I just don't like these one-size-fits-all bureaucracies in Washington. We see it with environmental regulations. Now BLM, this is maybe a narrow issue, but it's close, near and dear to my heart. Bureau of Land Management is going to start regulating fracking. The states are already doing that. They know their water better than Washington. They know their geology better than Washington.
Congressman?
So we're constantly fighting that.
Sir, there's a lady up here that's been very patient up here.
Okay, yes. And you have been serving our country for a number of years, haven't you?
30.
30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Lyons with Common Sense News. When are we going to build that border? Because we got Hezbollah coming across, we got gang members coming across, not just sweet little Hispanic people that we love, but the other people that we don't care about.
I wish I had the answer for you. We need to do more. Yeah, we're not we're not doing a good job. In fact, we've appropriated money that has been spent on other things. Okay, let's go on back over here. Robin, do you have someone up there?
Congressman Lamborn. Mine goes back to a comment that you made that the Senate bill for the immigration created amnesty. The way I read it, it's like 15 years in the process. So I don't understand. I mean, they're paying fines after 4 years. They get an extension for another 4 years. At that end of the 4 years, they pay another fine. Then they finally become legal permanent residents, green or brown card holders, green card holders. So how is that an amnesty? If the bill was to be signed tomorrow, they would not become citizens for another 13 to 15 years away. So how is that amnesty? Now, Ellis Island was a different thing because there they were bringing them in through Ellis Island, signing them, became citizens. So it's a completely different thing. So I don't understand how the 15-year gap, 13-year gap is amnesty.
Okay. That's a fair question. My understanding of the Senate bill is that the people in that situation are in a better position than someone on the outside who has been trying to get in for 5, 10, 15 years. And so I think it amounts to a shortcut. It's a long period, but it's more privileged. Okay, Robin, do you have someone else maybe on this side? We're trying to get as many as possible. Thank you for your patience. Thanks for your great involvement.
Yeah, it's my understanding that in the Constitution that the House of Representatives is responsible for holding the judicial branch of government accountable. I'd like to know what's the status on the major issues, Fast and Furious, Benghazi, IRS and Tea Party, and Justice Department selectivity. Those are items you need to hold them accountable for, and yet all I'm hearing is a run around going on.
Okay. Let's see, how much time do we have left? And I believe these are real scandals, not phony scandals. I think it's atrocious when, now the IRS is disliked to begin with, but when we fear them because they audit us selectively because we're involved in conservative causes, or if you're an organization that want to be given the same status as what people would do individually, you're just making it collective, because that's all that the 501c3 is. It's not a tax subsidy. And you're mistreated by being discriminated against. I think that's a horrible thing, and that's a dangerous thing. And it really bothers and concerns and disturbs me. I have some good friends on the committees of jurisdiction, the Ways and Means Committee and the Government Reform Committee. Some great people that are doing everything they can to bring some of these people to bear. Now, you bring them in, they might plead the Fifth Amendment. They might stonewall. They might refuse to turn over documents. Then you have to go to court. Then you have to compel their testimony. And they're smart. They know how to drag something out months or years. And I wish it weren't that way. We're trying to get to the bottom of that. But we also need the media to listen to the priorities of the American people and not worry about rodeo clowns. But get to real issues like the IRS and Benghazi. I'm disturbed about Benghazi. We still don't have an explanation. And I've seen people interviewed who were part of that the FBI can't seem to find. And I think that something's wrong there. And I don't think Hillary Clinton really gave a full answer. In fact, she said, well, if you try to figure out what went wrong, how does that bring them back? Okay, I think that was evading the question, and they haven't really been forthcoming with their answers. So for so many reasons, these things are serious. They're not phony, and we've had literally hundreds of hearings on these various issues. Hundreds of hearings. The press ignores 90% of it. Sometimes you'll see it on C-SPAN or C-SPAN 2 or C-SPAN 3. Sometimes things will get out into the press. Once in a while, the administration will comply and produce the witnesses or the documents, but other times, if it's, for whatever reason, they'll just stonewall. So yeah, it's very frustrating, and we can keep in touch on that. I'm open to, my ears are open to ways of putting a bomb under these people. Okay, Lee, right here. Right.
Sir, you mentioned President Obama canceling the employer mandate. That was illegal and unconstitutional and unilateral. The statute itself does not give him leeway. And nowhere in Article 2 of the Constitution is there a provision where the president can ignore laws he does not like. The statute itself says that. There are 2 Supreme Court decisions in living memory where the president has been told that he has to obey every facet of the law as it is signed. Obama is literally and openly claiming the power to rule by decree outside the law and Constitution. Under Obamacare, only members of Congress and the states have the legal standing to sue on constitutional grounds. Everybody else is barred by the terms of the statute. It does not require permission of either the Speaker of the House or the Republican National Committee for a member of Congress to go down to D.C. District Court and file a separation of powers lawsuit and bring the violation before the Supreme Court. No Republican member of Congress has filed such a suit, thus they've acquiesced in Obama's claim. 3 questions. 1, why has no Republican member of Congress stood up to defend the Constitution and the rule of law in court? 2, why have you yourself not filed a suit against the President to defend the Constitution and the rule of law? And 3, if the federal government functionally can operate outside the law and the Constitution with no consequences, why do we have to?
You asked some good questions. I'd like to see that reference you had. Show it to me afterward about where only a member of Congress or only a state can. Okay, I haven't heard that, but, and I went to law school, but I'd like to see that, and we can talk more about this. Also, it takes some money to file a lawsuit. I do know that as Republicans, we have come up with, we found money either privately or publicly to, like when we defended DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, because the Attorney General wouldn't enforce it. We took that to the Supreme Court, and they came up with what I consider a bad decision. Yeah, yeah. Okay, wait. Okay, wait. No, we're not going to talk about political issues. No, let's don't get into political issues. But yeah, let's talk about the mechanism on that. And you do know that it's going to take several years. That's optimistic to get to a resolution. We'll have a new president before the suit's resolved. We'll have a new Senate and a new House in just next year, 15 months from now. So those things will happen fast. Sometimes the best resolution, the fastest resolution, is people using their right to vote and select new people who listen to them, new senators and representatives. So sometimes the political route is the fastest. But I'd like to see that, okay? Okay, this gentleman right here. We've had previous discussions.
Thank you, Congressman. First, I got to salute you for your stand on putting limits on the NSA surveillance. Okay. You broke with most of the Republicans who got in line and said, but you stood out. Thanks. And thank you for standing up for soldiers. Most people in Congress who stand for military, they stand for the contractors or for the generals, and you're standing for the soldiers.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I have the same question I had for you 2 years ago, the last town hall that I went to.
Okay. Like I say, we've talked before.
Yes, we have. I asked you 2 years ago if you wouldn't do something to help get American POW Bo Bergdahl released from Taliban captivity. At that time, he'd been held for 2.5 years. It's now 4 years. 2 years ago, you told me, hey, that's really not my job as a congressman. That's up to the president, and he's the one who should be getting the guy released. Well, what does Obama do for soldiers? You tell me. Okay, so I'm asking you if you could please consider doing something, talking to the Pentagon, talking to their POW office, because the Taliban wants to make a trade. They've asked us to make a trade, and I'd ask you to consider that.
Okay. And by the way, let me tell you a little story. I had because I'm on armed services, I get to talk with some of our greatest heroes in this country. And I was visiting recently with the guy who shot and killed Osama bin Laden from Navy SEAL Team 6. And he's a hero. He's a hero. Anyway, he told a story. He was back stateside, and he has 2 little girls, and he was getting them ready to go somewhere, and they were listening to the radio. And the guy on the radio, this was a year afterward, the guy on the radio said, do you remember where you were a year ago when you found out that Osama bin Laden was dead? And he thought to himself, yeah, I was in his bedroom looking down at his corpse. That's a hero. That's a hero.
Getting back to existing immigration law.
Yes.
We talk about overstayed visas. Why is that such an issue? Why can't the government be as productive as private business is forced to be?
You know, there's no good answer to that. The government has fallen down on that. We don't enforce people complying by the terms of their visas like we should. I mean, the 9/11 hijackers, some of them were violators of. So we just don't do a good job of that. If you have a Department of Justice that doesn't want to do what Congress says, and I can give you about 200 examples, it's hard to have oversight. You try, you say the right thing, you hope the American people are engaged and listen. You guys here, you're engaged, but some people aren't engaged. So it's our job, my job, and your job to get people to listen and understand what's going on. We can all do better at that. But yeah, we should be able to. E-Verify is one attempt to bring that into better enforcement, because that person who overstays the visa, if E-Verify is working right, they won't be able to get a job without that becoming aware, becoming known. So that's one example. We need to do a lot better job. There's just no question about it. Okay.
Sir, Sir.
Who said that?
Congressman, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, Dale.
We have some questions out on this outer edge.
Sure,
just
okay.
out of peripheral
We'll
view.
come back over here in a minute. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, let's see. I have to remember my question.
We can come back to you.
Yeah. You vote on the debt ceiling, correct?
Yes.
Okay. 2 questions. What will be your vote? September 30th, right? Is when you guys vote for that?
Okay, the debt ceiling hasn't yet been determined because the government still has enough money from the last go-around to operate under current conditions. So it could be as early as that, it could be later in the year.
Okay, so
but
you guys got to play the little chicken game, right? You know, that's what they do.
I wouldn't put it that way, but...
yeah, that's what they do. And then the Republicans have to stop saying that the government will shut down, right? It's kind of a misnomer. Can you please explain how you guys are going to reword that so the public can hear that the government will not shut down if they don't get their money? Can you explain that, how you guys are going to address that to the public? Because it's kind of a scare tactic, because the government will not shut down without their money, right?
Okay, I'm trying to understand your question. The scare tactics are coming from people who say Republicans don't want to pay the bills of the country, or they want our country to go into default, and that's not true. That's not true. We want to have remedies put into place so that we don't have this keep happening again. If we were to do some kind of major spending reductions or reforms of some of the entitlement programs which haven't been touched, you know, we've hammered defense, for instance. We haven't touched entitlements. If we have some reforms there, I would have loved to, and I voted for a budget, a balanced budget amendment. People here, some from Colorado, said they supported that idea, but they voted no. So that was very disappointing. That would have been another reform. If we can do major things to remedy so we don't keep having this, then if that's a condition, then yeah, I would support raising the budget limit if we can have some reforms in place. I'm not going to give a blank check to the president. Does that answer your question? Does that answer your question? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, this lady here in the middle of the row. Robin, if you could get her the microphone. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Congressman Lamborn. I'm a pastor and faith leader here in Colorado Springs, and I had the opportunity to come visit you in D.C. Back in July, and I got to meet with your assistant, Brandon.
Good.
It was a great experience, and I do want to speak to the issue of immigration reform. I'm a part of a nationwide movement called the Evangelical Immigration Table, and we're advocating for just and fair and compassionate immigration reform. And so as one who comes from a biblical worldview and one who recognizes the dignity and the image of God stamped on every human being, I wanted to say, actually, the Christ in me greets the Christ in you, knowing that you are also a person of faith. And I'm wondering, my question would be, how do you, as a person of faith, respond to immigration with the knowledge that every human being is made in the image of God? And then secondly, I just wanted to let you know that I am praying for you, and there are other people gathered here with me today who are praying for you. There are many around this state who are praying for you, asking that we would recognize the God-given dignity in every human being.
Well, thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your prayers. As a person of faith, and myself and yourself, and many, many, if not most of us, or all of us here in this room, I think we need to have compassion for everyone in this country and in the entire world. So I think compassion is part of a working out of our faith. And loving people, doing where we can helpful things for those in need so they can rise further in their station in life. At the same time, we have to respect the rule of law. I think that's part of my duty as a citizen and part of my faith, you might say, to be loyal and respectful to my country and its laws. If we just said anyone out there come into the U.S., you know, half the world would want to move here, and you know that wouldn't be sustainable, obviously. So we have to have a system of laws in place and so on. So that's why we have to have this immigration debate, and we should have laws, and they should be smart laws. They should be compassionate, but they need to be smart also. And we can't do everything for everybody. And our first duty is to the citizens and the people living here in this country.
Hi, my name is Rachel, and my question is in regards to both what some would call skilled and unskilled immigration reform. I also believe that there is human dignity in each individual. My first question is, have you had the opportunity to meet undocumented immigrants in the country who are working very hard to enhance their skills and serve the only country that they know, in many cases, that have been brought over since they were little kids? Have you been able to speak with some?
Let me respond to that. I do believe that children who did not make the decision to come here illegally are in a different position than those who made that decision who were adults. I understand that. And I think that we can give them some kind of special thought.
So would that translate to law?
Possibly.
Okay.
But that's where I'm listening to you and you and you. I'm listening to, and I'm studying. You know, I'm doing things like I said earlier, I'm going to go down to Tucson. I'm talking to people. I'm talking to groups. I'm talking to individuals. So yeah, there's still things I'm learning. There's still things I need to know.
There's some beautiful people I've had the opportunity to volunteer with. And then in regards to skilled, what some call skilled undocumented labor, I know a lot of the technology companies, especially in Silicon Valley, are really hammering that we need more engineers and skilled labor of that sort. What is your stance as it relates to that?
Okay, that's a good question. We had earlier comments about that. If it's just an excuse to get a low-priced worker, you know, I'm not very sympathetic. I want an American worker. But if there is someone who has mental ability or education who can help create jobs in this country, who's from India or some other place, I'd rather have them be creating jobs in America than jobs back in India. So there is a place for highly skilled people to have, I think, more ability to work here. And this is even apart from citizenship. This may just be working here legally, which is a different issue in some cases than citizenship.
If they're so talented, would it not make sense to enable them to become part of the American ecosystem?
Well, that's what we're discussing. So thank you. We should go on to other questions now. Okay, Lee, there's a gentleman here who's been raising his hand a lot.
For 100 years, for quite some time, the progressives have been making their moves, and they really feel now that it's their hour to finally strike and complete the fundamental transformation, as Barack Obama said. In recent years, they've come out of the closet. You've seen them with their love of Che Guevara and some other revolutionaries, and I have to say, be aware of these people, be aware of who they are, be aware of their actions, because these people are not ashamed of their love of statism and government, and they feel that there's going to be a nice, compassionate government that's going to arise, but it'll turn out to be disaster, and ultimately it could very well bite them in the you-know-where as far as when the state comes after them. So I just wanted to make that remark.
Thank you. Thank you. This gentleman right here has his hand. It's getting so hard now because some of you had your hands up a lot, and I'm trying to get to everyone. If I'm not able to, we do have the cards in the back, and what we're going to do is review those later for your questions, and hopefully we can get back to you with an answer on a personal basis.
Yeah, and contact information is important.
Yeah, so your contact information is important on that.
Right, legibly.
But we'll do what we can for the remainder of our time. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Congressman. Am I on? Yeah, okay. First, I want to say it's good to see Jeannie's doing much better after fall. Yeah. So glad to have you here. I just have one simple question. What is your position on the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership? What's your position on the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership?
I don't know enough about that. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Well, or should we talk afterward? If it's going to take more than a minute, let's talk afterward.
I'll just mention something about it. Basically, what it is called sovereignty pooling. They want to merge us with the European Union, and Obama's pushing that with the TPP right now, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and so it's something that I can give you information on.
Please do. No, I am not in favor of anything that erodes our national sovereignty. As a matter of fact, several of us, several years ago, started the Sovereignty Caucus. And we work with the Heritage Foundation. And we are trying to educate the American people, educate members of Congress, and pressure our senators when a treaty comes before them that may do just that. And we've had some treaties. I was glad that we did not pass the disability treaty. It sounded good. But it did not get the 2/3 vote that it needed. There's a small arms treaty, but it had sovereignty problems with it, where other countries could end up telling us, or bodies telling us what to do. I want us to be in control of our destiny as a country. So that would also apply to a small arms treaty, the Law of the Sea treaty, and other things as well. We'd use up the rest of our time if we got just into that. So I'll get the material from you later. Thank you. Robin, do you have someone over there? Yes, sir.
Thank you. I was wondering, back on the immigration issue, if you could address the amnesty issue a little bit more. I'm Drew, registered Republican, since I could vote. And my question for you is, you know, I'm not happy about the situation as far as the number of illegal immigrants or undocumented workers that are in the country or the border security. But, I mean, I don't think anybody at this point is planning on parading out 10 to 15 million people out of the country. I mean, what's the real Republican response to, you know, what we're going to do instead of amnesty?
Well, I thought your question was why do I don't believe in amnesty? Was that your question? Or could you restate your question?
What's the Republican alternative to,
okay.
You know, providing amnesty?
It would be using existing law. We do have a process in place for, but it's broken in some ways. I mentioned this earlier. Less than 10% of the people who become citizens do it on the basis of merit. And when I say merit, I mean education or the money or the ability to create jobs for Americans here in America. Some kind of contribution like that. There may be an ability, they have a desire to work, that's fine, but that special ability to create jobs and enhance our economy is not something that our current system does very well. So we do need to revisit the immigration laws we have on the books right now. But I don't like the ability for someone, just because they've been living here and made a wrong decision to get here in the first place because it was illegal, to get ahead of those who are following the rules. That's why. So I think the Senate bill doesn't fully respect that principle. That's one of the reasons I'm against the Senate bill. I think that now the children who were brought here, they could be considered in a different category. And I'm willing to look at something for them. But the devil's in the details. And I haven't made any commitments. Me being here listening to you all, I'm still in the learning stage. Okay, Dale, do you have anybody? Oh, you got a great chance earlier. So. Ma'am, yes.
Hi, my name is Linda. If I understand the Constitution correctly, there was an amendment during the Civil War that awarded that the slaves who were in the country at the time were given special dispensation and became citizens, and that anybody born from them would also be considered citizens. That translated into a, what do you call it? No, well, yeah, anchor babies. But I mean, the idea that we're the only country that says that anybody born here on our land, it becomes a citizen. No other country does that. So I was wondering, is there, that's sort of like the core of the problem here, part of the problem, is that parents come in here illegally, they have kids, they're considered citizens, so what are we going to do about that? If we go to the core of the problem, isn't there a way that we can solve it that way? by not interpreting the Constitution in that manner?
I would be in favor of the courts re-examining that issue, because the wording of the 14th Amendment says that those who are born under the laws of the United States are citizens, and that covered the slaves who are now free because of the Civil War. Everyone recognizes that if you're in this country as a diplomat, if you're a Russian diplomat at the UN and you and your wife have a baby, that baby's not an American citizen. That baby born in New York City is a Russian citizen, because that baby wasn't born under the laws of the United States. So when someone is here legally, that does allow the question, were they under the laws of the United States? I think the courts should look at that. They may come down and say exactly the status quo. If you're born here, that's all it takes. And in any case, I can't ever see them retroactively changing anything, even the day before or 10, 20, 30 years before. That's not going to change. That's a done deal, basically. Yeah. So I would like the courts to look at that, but until they do, and it'd have to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I don't always have faith in their ability to make the right decision, as we've discussed earlier. I think that is an issue that's ripe for adjudication. Okay, we have time for a few more questions. Okay, sir, you've been struggling to raise your hand here and get attention.
Nice to finally meet you, Mr. Lamborn. My name is Bradley Schmidt, Army brat, Fort Carson. I'm a member of Numbers USA Media Standards Corps. And I personally am impacted by illegal immigration. I was hit by a illegal alien, drunk driver, hit and run.
Oh, gosh.
And when I went to court, this municipality is still keeping his information away from me. I've been suffering for 9 years to try to get my life back together, and I was doing pretty well. And unfortunately, I worked at an auction house a couple blocks from here. Got hit by a garbage truck, so I was doing much better before. But praise the Lord, I got a job working at Xerox starting Tuesday.
Good.
My question, sir.
Good.
And my question to you, sir, is agree that all God's children are of equal value, and we desperately would love to help all the people in Mexico. But I just think this lady brought to bear the question about the 14th Amendment. I think it needs to be eradicated and defined so that we don't have to continue to feel guilty when we spend $3.1 million a year for people who don't respect our culture, our people, our religion, our language. We're tired of feeling guilty for not doing the best we can, because you know what? We're so busy being destroyed by those who should not be here that we don't have anything left to help them, and that is part of the problem.
We're going to still try to get squeeze as many as we can. Sir.
Hopefully, the Republicans will take the House, keep the House, and take the Senate in 2014.
Well, I won't make any political statements. I won't respond to that.
Well, you probably are not going to like this question either. If Obama continues to violate the Constitution, will they impeach him?
I don't know if I want to touch that one. A president is subject to impeachment if they've committed high crimes and misdemeanors. Okay. Different people have different ways of defining that. Lee, let's take this lady right here. I'm sorry, I can't answer any better than that.
Okay, is it on?
Yes.
Okay.
Hold it close.
Hold it higher?
Yeah.
That better? I don't have to sing, right?
No.
Okay. In all the discussion about immigration, it seems that there's a bit of a dichotomy between what you're saying you want to focus on as approach, being a skilled workforce, job creators, and the approach in getting there. And what I mean is that it seems that the focus is put on the individual. But where is the focus on the businesses that take advantage of a low-skilled, undocumented workforce to increase their profits? And quite frankly, to keep our prices down. I mean, we all have a hand in this. We like that low price lettuce.
Yeah.
But we have to look at both sides of the coins here.
We do. We do.
Now, where are you on making it unprofitable for these businesses to take advantage of this workforce?
Okay.
Because they're basically held captive. They're undocumented. They can't complain.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your approach taking that factor?
Well, we have some pretty stringent laws on the books now that I don't think are really being enforced. We need to enforce those laws. And we need to have an e-verify system in place so there's no excuse for hiring someone that the employer knows is not a citizen and is taking a job away from someone who is or is here legally. So okay, two more. Ma'am, right here.
First of all,
could you start
Thank
over?
you.
Could you start
My
over?
name is Kathleen Ricker, and I appreciate you coming today as well. Just a couple of facts that I think are important. Since 2007, the illegal immigration group from Mexico has gone steadily down. It's at the lowest rate ever. So I think that's important to know. In the new law, and what I respect about the Senate bill is that for once the Democrats and Republicans worked together. And so I appreciate that in our government. So what I would ask you, first of all, I ask you to read the Heritage Report. I read the criticisms of it, because right after it came out, it was debunked, because the main author of that, his research was flawed, and he was really somewhat disgraced at the university where he did this PhD. So please reread that, because the next week it came out, and I think the Cato report's economic figures, again, the Cato Institute is a conservative institute, maybe not as conservative as the Heritage Foundation, but it is certainly conservative, and it did come out with some economic benefits that I think you could look at and maybe think about that. And then lastly, if you don't like that, I would ask you and your fellow Republican colleagues to work together with the Democrats in the House and problem solve then and do something better, because the law on the books now is terrible.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment, and we have time for one more. Robin, can you find one more person?
Mr. Congressman, I just want to thank you. A few years ago, you helped me out with some veteran status issues that I had. But I had a question on the immigration. Now, I understand everybody has their own viewpoints, and I respect the teachers and that lady's opinions over there. I've worked in a system, and I don't represent them by me speaking like this, emergencies for the last decade. Overwhelmingly, majority of interactions I've had with calls involving illegal immigrants has been violence, gang-related activities. Now you have Schumer, Durbin, Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid saying that if the House passes anything, they're going to go to committee and pretty much get amnesty from that. What are you going to do to stop that? Because the Speaker of the House, Cantor, all those guys pretty much roll over and play dead every time it goes to committee.
That's a great question, and that's kept me awake at night. John Boehner knows that if he allows the Senate bill to come out of conference, he's no longer Speaker. He's done. He's done. And it makes a huge difference who goes to committee. I mean, we're not going to let, if we send a border security bill, let's say, or a guest worker bill to the Senate, they're not going to report out the Senate version, because the conferees, half of them we pick in the House. Yeah, Chuck Schumer will be there on the other side, but we don't have to agree with their version of a report, and we don't even have to vote on it if it comes back to the House. We don't have to vote on it. So, but that's a great question, and it has kept me awake at night. Joe, I'm going to turn things back to you. Why don't you come on up here? I want to thank you all for being here. I wish I could have gotten to everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. And remember, if you do have some questions or comments that you want to give the congressman, There's a box up there wrapped in the American flag. Just drop your comment cards in there, and we appreciate you for being here today. Thank you.